All right. So the first one is, how did you find yoga?
Um, well, I suppose how did I find my mum would be the question. My mum did yoga when she was pregnant with me. So
Ah.
that was my first, probably embodied experience of yoga. A little bit like my little girl is
Yeah.
having that experience as well. My mum, I was born in '72, so yoga it was very much sort of the Iyengar crowd at that point in time, very much predominant if you were in the yoga scene. My mum just found yoga. I'm not quite entirely sure how she found yoga exactly, but I know that it was done, and she found an awesome teacher that she loved, and she continued it through her pregnancy, even though she didn't do prenatal yoga. So that was my first sort of proper experience, I would say, of yoga. And then as a kid, I remember going along to a few of her adult classes with her, just because I was too little to be going elsewhere to things like that. So I remember yoga from a tiny, tiny age. Um, and and then I don't really remember it. I became very interested and enthusiastic about dance and ballet.
Ah.
So then I moved, into that as a child from a very early age, at the age of 3, and carried that through to make it a career in ballet. And I came back to yoga as an adult in my early 20s when yeah, was just intuitively drawn to, and I suppose reviewing it now, when people ask this question, how did you come to yoga? I was doing a lot of the breath work in just intuitively, and I say a lot of the breath work, slowing my breath down to quiet my nervous system, to center myself after a performance, because obviously the adrenaline and the high that comes with performing,
Sure.
it's not always conducive to be up till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you've got to do the whole day again the next day. So I started doing, the breath work intuitively, naturally, I suppose. And then I found, I think in the local newspaper where I was living at the time in Putney, they were advertising free yoga classes at the Shivananda Centre.
Yes.
And so I ended up going along to one of those, which was, yeah, I suppose a great revelation for me in terms of physical movement, because everything that although adored dance, and the reason that I was doing it was because I was absolutely passionate about it, it felt like, performing wise, that it was split, that it was for me, but also for the audience, because obviously when you're performing, you're giving something.
Yeah.
And it felt like one of the first times in a yoga class that it was actually only to nourish myself, inside of the Shivananda class that I fathomed. Um, Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which one it is. It's fortunate for my teaching now, but they did all the chanting at the end, which completely freaked me out. And I didn't go back and sit on a yoga mat again for another couple of years, because I really thought that I had entered into some sort of like weird sect, and as much as I liked the movement, the other stuff was terribly weird, and it wasn't explained. And I say that as as a teacher now, I adore kirtan and chanting and sound and mantra work. But yeah, it's been something that I've recalled often when I'm sort of encouraging people to,
Yeah.
start to try and taste and play around with sound. So, a long-winded answer to your question, Gemma. How did I find yoga? I found yoga on many occasions, but those are the main prominent sort of first tasters as a child and adult.
Thank you. Can I ask you a quick question about the dance and the yoga?
Sure.
So how did you find that they helped each other, or did you find that, because dancers often seem like they really have to put their body through so much in order to, like you said, do a performance every single day. And
Yeah.
then yoga is so much about balance and keeping the balance in your body. How did those two kind of work together?
They still do. I mean, if you can, whatever we choose to do in life, we can integrate it into yoga, because it seeps into everything that we do, yoga. Just being here and being present with you in this interview is, some of the aspects of life and being more total in life. And
Yeah.
dance, in the many different myriads that it has, is physical movement. It connects us to our heart, whether you're doing it as a profession or whether you're doing it just because you adore that. It doesn't matter really at the end of the day. Inside of yoga, for me as a teacher and a student of yoga, we have the opportunity of using the body. It's not the only way in, of course, but it's a gateway that many of us use as yogis or yoginis. For me, it's very much connecting to the heart space and to the feeling state of who we are,
Yeah.
we truly are. I would say the parallels for that inside of dance is very, very similar. That you can connect to the feeling state of either a character that you are expressing, Juliet, for example, in Romeo and Juliet, connecting into the heartfelt qualities of that. So I think there are many parallels inside of yoga and dance that I could probably talk to for a lot longer, but those are the obvious ones.
Oh, thank you. Okay, next question. As not many, maybe everyone knows, but you are a pregnant goddess at the moment with your baby coming in a few months. So just quickly, how has your practice supported your pregnancy? As you said, you started as a, baby in a tummy, so it comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, I suppose. Absolutely. How does it support, how has yoga supported my pregnancy? Yoga has supported my life ever since I sort of stepped into it as an adult, and intellectually, logically, and heart-orientated aspects have really given a great richness to my life. I would say that on a physical level, of course, it has supported the changes that one goes through in pregnancy, because they are quite profound to watch your body change and expand and release and so on. So it's allowed my physical realm to stay supported in terms of, I would say support, strength, and freeing up areas that have needed to be free. And also supporting her in her development.
Yeah.
Yoga physically creates space within, as well as strength. So for me, posture, of course, is one of the reasons why we choose to work with yoga asana, is to support our structure and to give it space. So that has been great in terms of, the change of her developing and my body expanding. And then on a mental and emotional front, for me, whatever journey that I'm doing in life, whether it be doing something in yoga that feels very challenging, like a new project, like writing a whole teacher training, or whatever it might be that makes me step into the mental and emotional process of me. I find that yoga, when I get on my mat, whatever that might be, whether it's physical, whether it's breath work, whether it's a combination of relaxation techniques or visualization techniques, it allows me to navigate to a strong centered point, a present point, to be able to be okay with the many challenges that come up and the joys, to really embody them. So I would say that yoga just continues to support me and has supported me through this change that on a hormonal level is quite extreme at times in pregnancy for some women. I would say for most women, even though, we may not necessarily admit it, it's a lot that the body goes through. And that can show up as a little bit of a madness at times, I would say. So, it's good to find the clarity within that and remember that there's still that presence, and inside of the madness that I can find a sort of place that's still and quiet, and take a bit of a distance from it and watch and almost have a giggle at the madness that comes up and the joy that comes up. So It feels like it has supported yet another journey that I've gone through in life, and I'm ever grateful. It gives me great strength, this yoga path.
Thank you. That's a really lovely answer. Okay, so next question. So this one, it's asking you to talk a little bit about the business of yoga, which is
Sure.
something that we often don't talk about. So there are so many talented yoga teachers who are working on making a living doing something they love. I know this from experience as well. But there's a stigma that yoga teachers don't earn very well, or there's a sort of belief that as a yoga teacher, you're always going to need to work on something else, or you're never really going to be able to support yourself that effectively. And I just wanted to ask, in your experience, with all of your experience, what are your thoughts on this, or your advice for yoga teachers out there that are wanting to make a career as a yoga teacher?
Yes, I mean, I can understand why that statement comment is out there, and I think that these days, I mean, when I first started teaching yoga was in '98, so we're talking 14 years ago, and there weren't the amount of teacher trainings and interest in yoga that there is now and has built over the last years. So, of course, if you look at it logically, there are many more people training to be yoga teachers, and so therefore there are many more yoga teachers out there looking to change their career because, first of all, on a holistic level, they want, I'm making up a story, but I would imagine that they're looking for a life that's outside of, or a career that's outside of the career that they already have, that brings them, like they find in their own yoga practice, home to themselves. So they are intrigued and potentially are looking for that sort of thing. So, and then they do the training, and they find that in their local area that there's not so many community centres or centres around, and that they're already full with a whole heap of other people doing their fitness or other yoga and so on. So it becomes a bit of a challenge, I would say, in terms of probably the main hubs. And I would imagine, Gemma, you've probably spoken to people in quite large areas like London, you're from Brighton. I mean, it's full of yoga down in Brighton, and a lot of people are drawn to those kind of places because they're wonderful places to live. It's by the sea and so on, so it's no wonder that there's a plethora of other people that are wanting to, be drawn there. So it doesn't surprise me in terms of that. There are, when I'm training people to be yoga teachers, obviously lots of people from lots of other places, and I think it's really finding, given that there are so many trainings out there, finding your niche. Mm-hmm. I think that if you're wanting to do something as a business and you're wanting to change your career, you need to look into that almost predominantly to know how far you can take it. So dependent on your area that you live, if you live in a smaller village, then hurrah, lucky you, that doesn't have so much available. You might be the first person that's bringing yoga to that area. However, if you're not, then you need to put on your savvy marketing hat and sort of work out how this might support your life in terms of whether you want to make it, like you said, a full career that supports everything, or that you're having to begin with do other things to support that so you can live. And I've noticed that it's, a couple of my trainees, now teachers, have done it gradually. That they have been very much wanting to be a yoga teacher, but the finances just haven't allowed them to, do that. But bit by bit, they build up their classes and they say yes to things that probably in another 5 years' time won't be on their schedule. Yeah. And, that they just keep plugging away at it. And little bit, then they can let go of one day at their office or wherever it is. So all of a sudden that they're, instead of doing a 5-day week at their office, they're doing a 3-day week. And the other 2 days are supported by private clients or saying yes to all of those gyms or things like that, that may not be so appealing right now for them, but at least it's work to get them to start teaching. And I think once you get into that system of your teaching, you get to really develop your skill.
Yeah.
You should learn so much on a teacher training, and you just need to practice. It's like learning a language. If you're not practicing, then the skills aren't going to be honed, and therefore potentially you're not going to become more skilled at what you're doing. So I would say for people out there that are training to be yoga teachers, have a realistic viewpoint of A, where you live, B, who you're marketing to, what you're trying to market, and your area. I mean, if you're living in an area that is more elderly people, then you're not going to be able to bring in hot Bikram yoga, for example. So you have to sort of look at it logically. And then I would say put yourself a fair goal. Do a 1-year plan or a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan to start to slowly take away some of your other work, so you're achieving what you're looking to do. And a couple of my main teachers that when I travel or ask people to cover my classes, what I've seen them do actually is that they've supported their sort of yoga business by working in yoga, but not necessarily teaching yoga all the time. Mm-hmm. So Michelle Stanley was in marketing, and she's managed to score the retail job at Try Yoga.
Uh-huh.
She's now a retail manager at Try Yoga, and it's just, for her, she does that, I think, 3 or 4 days a week, and then she does all her teaching in other parts. Emma Heald, another beautiful spirit, she was working at Tate Modern, and she's just scored Lululemon job at the showroom.
Wow.
So, and she's doing, slowly she started to take away stuff from Tate and add in her teaching. And then she was able to get the job that she was potentially looking for that would then support, a 3-day week at Lululemon instead of at Tate Modern.
Yes.
So it's a gradual process, I would say, Gemma, these days. It's not one, because there is a flood in the yoga market, obviously dependent on where you live. I think you really have to put that thinking cap on and go, okay, this is a process. This isn't something that I just go, oh, goodbye job, now I've done my training. I'm now going to become a yoga teacher. It's time to build classes up. I mean, it took me years to build my classes up.
Really?
And to get a profession out of it that felt like it was financially viable.
Thank you. That was such an interesting and practical approach, because sometimes, as I'm sure you know, with yoga, exactly what you said, you can just do the training and it's all amazing and you feel amazing and everything's amazing and you think, right, everything's just going to happen. And it doesn't happen straight away. So it's so lovely to hear your very practical, grounded approach.
Yeah, you have to get left brain when you're doing this in yoga. Left brain is the logical side. It's all very well being in right brain, which is our fabulous yogi, creative, and this is going to happen. But you've got to keep it grounded. You've got to keep it real. If you are wanting to make something truly happen, then you have to do the grassroots look at where am I, what's possible. Do some market research, make it a project, and then it's a possibility. Then you start to see and know that it takes time. It is not something that is going to happen overnight. It's rare that happens. It's rare that you have the opportunity like I did, which was wonderful, to meet someone that put me into the limelight a little bit, and sort of everybody was like, ooh, now I'd like her as a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And at that point as well, for me, there wasn't that much yoga out there. I wasn't in, I didn't have 100 other people going, I'm going to go to that community centre and do what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, it was, fortunate, and we make our own luck as well.
Yeah. Thank you. That was really, really helpful and
Pleasure.
Interesting.
Pleasure.
Okay, so next one. How do you bring the philosophies and teachings of yoga into your everyday life?
I would say the main thing, Gemma, that I bring into my everyday life is presence. Staying present. And the ability to be able to do that is the work that I've done previously on myself in terms of creating more space decluttering my inner landscape, so to speak. You know, we are in life, I would say, downloaded with a lot of information right from the start, from when we're born. And that download of information may not resonate when we become sort of more adultly and wise, yet we run on that program without consciousness, often, many of us. And what happens is that there's a lot of then time given to the download of information within, and less time to be able to be fully present or present in life. And so therefore, we're kind of playing in two worlds. We're playing with our inner world that may not be really productive to what we're trying to achieve, yet we're conditioned with it because we haven't questioned it. Some of us don't even know what conditioning is.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, nor did I. I mean, it's only about 8 years ago when I started to really delve a bit deeper into yoga and what it means and life and certain things that have occurred in my life, the why of it, that I was like, wow, I'm running on some sort of program that I've had installed into my system from my dance background. I left home when I was 11 to the Royal Ballet School and so on, that actually a lot of it stand me in great stead, but some of it doesn't. It's really warped and quite off, and it was taking up it was consuming a lot of my energy and a lot of my inner process. So it was like I was in two worlds, and I think a lot of people live like that. I know I don't speak on my own on that one because I see it a lot as a yoga teacher. And so I would say, in order to be able to offer that, as you said, what do you live by on an everyday sort of ethos, presence, is that I have done a hell of a lot of work, excuse my French, on myself, to disentangle and decode and look at and question whether or not I want to sit and resonate with that certain frequency, if I can call it like that, if you're still following me on that mad jargon. And then by choosing, I've opened up more space, which gives me a deeper level of presence to be within life. So it feels like that is one of the greatest gifts that I've been able to offer my life. And to be honest with you, it's been horribly hard work at times. It's not been joyous, some of the stuff that, you know, yoga asks us to look at. And I say yoga, I mean, it's psychology. I sort of broaden it into, because we're not just yoga. For a lot of people, it's like, well, it's the poses. But for me, and for many people as well, it's like mind, body, mental experience, energetic experience, and how does it all show up as me? So I would say my main philosophy that I follow is, you know, trying to stay with a deep level of presence. So I'm not elsewhere when I'm doing something as much as possible. Or if I do go elsewhere, I'm like having a little chat to myself and going, oh, that's interesting. What's going on there? And then able to come back into more presence, just because it's more interesting, actually.
Thank you. That's such a great answer. And really inspiring, because that, I mean, is what it's all about, really. The presence.
Yes, the precious present. We only have this moment, and we may as well make the most of it, because we have no clue what on earth is going to happen in the next 10, 15 seconds. We can make an assumption.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you, when you say you've done lots of work on all these different aspects of life, has that been just within sort of a yoga practice and the various practices it offers, or has it been in other ways as well?
Well, it depends on what you're regarding as that. So it depends on where you're coming from. I mean, there's so much about yoga that I don't know, and I would claim that to be the same as your lovely self. Probably know about 0.1% in yoga,
so much
actually, to be honest with you. So even though I've sat with it for a while. So in terms of where you're coming from, and I'm assuming things, I have done lots of stuff outside of the yoga field, let's say, of sitting down on a yoga mat, banging the drum, chanting, reading yogic texts and so on. They have been really interesting and intellectual and heart-opening. However, for me, I think the greatest piece that has allowed me to unpick and find a sense of freedom in my life at times, and it's ever-going, ongoing. It's not something that just because I've come to a deeper level of presence now that it's going to stay forever and ever. I've realised that as well, that there's other stuff that's going to come up and go, hey, check me out. And I'm like, oh, okay, here we go again. But I would say psychology, I think it's all to do with, a lot to do with the conditioned mind and the unpicking of that. So I've spent a lot of time working. I played in an ashram. I say I played because it really did feel like playtime, but it was full on at times, in Pune, called Osho's ashram. Mm-hmm. So they do a lot of work on oneself, let's say, on decoding, unraveling, which essentially is what yoga is interested in as well, to allow us to understand, I suppose, who we truly are, which is we're this body, but yet we're also something else. We're this mind, but yet we're also something else. And what is that something else? And if we're all consumed by the body or the mind or the heart, then how can we understand what that something else is, or even have an inkling into it? So I would say the psychological path of sometimes therapy, to understand wounding, why I'm in a certain loop, why I keep coming back to something, has been some of the things that I've been doing outside of the sort of perimeters of what we potentially deem as yoga techniques as well.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So now just the last little bit is, how can we see more of you? What are you working on? Where can we find you? How can we get more from you?
Well, given that my little girl arrives at the beginning of next year, I will be on a sort of like level of presence until April next year. We'll be sort of more undercover. However, Apple Yoga will be running without me in terms of weekly classes. After that, I will be coming back into the yoga community as a teacher weekly. But I have just done 4 new DVDs. So they're out to buy on appleyoga.com, based on the elements, earth, water, fire and air. And each of these DVDs have 2 flows on them, and each of the flows are 45 minutes long. So one flow is called solar, so using the element of earth but a more energized sequence, solar, and then using the element of earth but a more lunar sequence. So that happens for each of the elements, and they are for healthy, fit beginners to intermediate advanced students, and each element will offer something different. So fire and air, I would say particularly the solar air and fire, the solar and lunar, are probably the most challenging in terms of physical movements with arm balances and so on. And the other aspects or the other elements have, probably far more conducive to a strong beginner in terms of many of them through to an intermediate student. So I'm really excited about those. They have been, I released a DVD sort of 7-8 years ago, so it's been a while since I've done something along those lines. So I'm excited to put my evolutionary change down on record, so to speak, and so for people to enjoy. How else can you access me? I've just filmed some prenatal DVDs, or a prenatal DVD with 3 flows in it, 3 45-minute flows. So I filmed those last week. I'm into edits next week, doing the voiceover at the beginning of January, hopefully before this little person arrives in our life. So I'm hoping that they will be available to people in the very near future.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. So that's exciting to be able to offer that to the prenatal community. And in terms of other aspects, my business is really split into 3 areas. So the group classes, a couple of the teachers that have trained with Apple Yoga will be running them for me in my sort of break until April. And then also I run retreats. This is the first year next year is the first year that I've offered one of the people that have trained with Apple Yoga that I really think is key to run a retreat for Apple Yoga. So Michelle Stanley, who I mentioned, beautiful teacher who did my first teacher training, is going to be running a retreat for Apple Yoga in Morocco at the end of April. So I'm really excited about that, because normally it's me that's doing all of the retreats. So I'm looking hopefully to both do that and to support the people that have trained with me as well. What else? If you're wanting to train in any aspect of either yoga teaching, if you're wanting to be a yoga teacher, or if you're wanting to just deepen your studies in yoga, there are many different sort of trainings and teacher trainings in terms of that on Apple Yoga. And we received our 500-hour status from Yoga Alliance this year. So
fantastic.
Really excited about that, because it's allowed me to go a bit nuts on all the creative trainings that I really would love to bring in, that I feel that would be of great use to yoga teachers once they've got their 200-hour foundation training. So that there's a lot that's coming up, and the majority of it will happen at the latter part of this year, and then I suspect 2014 might be a little bit of a crazy one for me in terms of where I am in the world and what I'm doing teaching-wise, retreat-wise, and so on. So
with your little bundle under your arm.
Yeah, my new best friend, she's going to be hanging out with me a lot, so I'm excited that she's going to travel with me, and as long as it feels appropriate. But it's my intention is to take my new best friend with me.
What a lucky little girl.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it. That's how you can find me in quite a few avenues.
So it's appleyoga.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so pretty much everything that you're doing, and whilst you're busy having baby and getting used to your new family, we can always join you on your DVDs.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic.
And
Great.
I've just done something for a channel on YouTube called Body Talk Daily, which are 10-minute bite-sized chunk flows for prenatal yoga, and they're going to be out in the new year. So if people are pregnant right now, because I had a lot of interest on social media when I was filming the flows last week, and they were like, I don't think they're going to be out because I'm pregnant right now. For those people, potentially, that they could, in the new year, have something, because I know some people are having spring babies, and I was unsure how quickly the process would be in post-production. So yeah, you can get me online, you can get me on the DVDs, and if not, if you're looking for something else like a retreat, there's a weekend retreat in September and November down at the lovely Florence House, which I'm sure you know, in Seaford.
Lovely.
And then other than that, it would be mainly trainings and weekly classes if you're London bound.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your time and for chatting to us. It's been so interesting to hear your very grounded but such helpful and real advice. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's the only way I know how to do it.